Chinese President Xi Jinping has met the leaders of South Korea and Japan separately ahead of their trilateral summit. High on the agenda, the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Economic matters will also be discussed, including tensions between Seoul and Tokyo. Now, the talks come amid concerns that North Korea is preparing to launch an intercontinental ballistic missile. The three leaders are hoping to find ways to prevent new confrontation with Pyongyang. And our correspondent Olivia Seong is in Chengdu, where tomorrow's summit will be taking place. She joins us live right now. Olivia, denuclearization likely dominate the talks. Question is, how is President Xi Jinping going to play a role in actually restarting discussions with Pyongyang?
Well, we have to know that China is North Korea's closest ally, and so its influence over the reclusive state is certainly very significant. And in President Xi's meeting with South Korean President Moon Jae-in earlier today, President Moon acknowledging the important role that China has played. And really, we have seen China's position on the Korean Peninsula issue remain largely quite constant. Today, President Xi continued to reiterate to his South Korean counterpart that China and South Korea share the same position and interest when it comes to North Korea, and that China advocates for a resolution to be found through dialogue and consultation, saying that this is a firm force to continue to maintain stability and promote talks. Now, President Xi also said that China supports South Korea in trying to continue to improve the South's relationship with North Korea, adding that, this is a very important to inject new momentum into peace talks. Now, of course, we do know that China does have an interest in seeing denuclearization talks make progress. Experts have said that China does not want to see a security threat at its doorstep. China, of course, shares that border with North Korea. Another concern is also that so long as North Korea remains a threat, that would mean that Japan, South Korea, and the U.S. will continue to have to boost its security capabilities in the region, and China is wary of that. So last week we saw China, together with Russia, propose that some sanctions be lifted off North Korea. It said that it was proposing this in order to break the deadlock between Pyongyang and Washington. This also as North Korea has given the U.S. until year-end to make concessions and to end what it's calling its policy of hostility. And so that is, of course, a big concern to the international community. The big question is whether China will be able to persuade Japan and South Korea, which are allies of the U.S., to accept its proposal, given that the U.S. has been opposed to lifting sanctions of North Korea for now.
Ollie, what else can we expect from tomorrow's trilateral meeting?
Well, definitely, the stage is set here in Chengdu for very important talks to take place. Of course, we expect the North Korea issue to continue to be a topic that is very high on the agenda. But besides that, we are expecting a lot of talk about economic cooperation as well. We are expecting the three countries to continue to push for the signing of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership by next year. Now, that refers to the Trade Pact, the Regional Trade Pact, RCEP, and we are also expecting the three countries to call for accelerated negotiations of a free trade agreement between the three countries as well. And all this comes amid China's tensions with the U.S. Of course, we know that China and the U.S. have recently announced an agreement on a Phase 1 trade deal, but still, there is still concern that tensions between these two superpowers will continue. And so in recent times, we have seen China trying to, bolster its relations with other countries like Japan, like South Korea. And today, from President Xi's talks with his South Korean counterpart, as well as with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, we've seen him reiterate that in the face of many challenges globally, it is important for China and Japan and China and South Korea to continue to cooperate. And we are likely to see this theme continue in the trilateral summit tomorrow. So certainly a lot to look out for, and this would mark a sharp change in China's relations with these two countries compared to a few years back, when tensions between the two countries, bilateral tensions had been very tense over historical and territorial issues with Japan and over the deployment of that U.S. anti-missile system in Korea as well.
All right, many thanks for that. Olivia Xiong speaking to us from Chengdu.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has thrown his support behind South Korean President Moon Jae-in's efforts to improve ties with North Korea, and our senior Korea correspondent Lim Yeon-suk tells us more.
It was their first meeting in about 6 months, following their talks early in Osaka, Japan, on the sidelines of the Group of 20 meeting. Now, during this meeting in Beijing that lasted slightly under 1 hour, President Xi reaffirmed the close ties between the two countries, despite the early spat they had over a U.S. anti-missile system that was deployed here in South Korea. President Moon acknowledged that ties may have strained in the past, but emphasized that the two countries shared a long history. He also thanked China, North Korea's closest ally, for playing a key role to bring about peace on the Korean Peninsula, and stressed the need to prevent military tensions. This meeting was held one day after North Korea said it has decided to bolster its military capability, and President Moon will leave China on Tuesday and return home after his trilateral meeting in the southern Chinese city of Chengdu. Lim Yeon-suk, CNA, Seoul.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe met with President Xi in Beijing as he kicked off his 3-day trip to China. They discussed bilateral relations and Mr. Xi's planned visit to Japan next spring.
And during tomorrow's trilateral summit in Chengdu, Mr. Abe is expected to reflect the U.S. point of view, and he's also scheduled to hold talks with President Moon Jae-in tomorrow afternoon. Our senior correspondent Michio Ishida tells us more.
Just before leaving for China, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe had a lengthy conversation of over an hour with the U.S. President Donald Trump. They talked extensively about North Korea. After the phone call, Mr. Abe told reporters he and Mr. Trump analyzed the situation in North Korea and agreed to coordinate their act. Mr. Abe expressed his support towards U.S. stance towards North Korea. He strongly condemned North Korea's provocative action, but they agreed that through peaceful dialogue, they'd call for North Korea to denuclearize. Mr. Abe's office says the phone conversation was requested by Mr. Trump. Mr. Abe also told Mr. Trump about his China trip, his meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping, and his will to join hands with China and South Korea for peace and stability in the region. The question is, how much will Mr. Abe do to mend soured ties over history and trade with South Korea? Now, Japan took action just on Friday to ease its trade policy towards South Korea for the first time since slapping restrictions in July. It's easing export license regarding a coating substance called resist, which South Korea relies much on Japan to make its semiconductors. Mr. Abe said relations between Japan and South Korea remain severe. The Treaty of Basic Relations between Japan and South Korea served as the premise to normalizing ties. A nation-to-nation pledge must be followed. These and the wartime forced labor issues are what Mr. Abe wants to state to President Moon Jae-in on Tuesday. Michio Ishida, CNA, Tokyo.